Throughout history, there have always been rituals that claim to offer a connection with forces beyond human comprehension, but few are as enigmatic and feared as the ritual of Abramelin. This is not a simple spell or an ordinary practice of ceremonial magic. It requires months of isolation, extreme purification, and absolute discipline. It is said that those who manage to complete it gain unlimited knowledge and mastery over spiritual entities. However, those who fail may face irreversible consequences, such as spiritual obsessions, madness, or even death. But why was this ritual hidden and restricted to so few? What is its true origin, and why did even great occultists like Aleister Crowley fail to complete it? More importantly, what is the real connection between this practice and the secret societies that control the backstage of the world? Among the most enigmatic grimoires in history, few carry a mystery as deep as the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. This is not an ordinary spellbook like the Key of Solomon or the Grimorium Verum. It does not teach instant enchantments, nor does it contain lists of spirits to be summoned without a greater purpose. Instead, it presents a long and rigorous process of spiritual transformation, something that few have dared to attempt. The book is attributed to a Jewish Kabbalist named Abraham the Jew, who is said to have lived in the 15th century. According to his accounts, he traveled through Egypt in search of true magic, something beyond the superficial formulas and empty rites practiced in medieval Europe. On his journey, he encountered a man named Abramelin, who revealed to him the secrets of a ritual that not only granted spiritual enlightenment but also conferred authority over the spirits that govern the hidden forces of the world. The manuscript was written in Hebrew and later translated into other languages. The most well-known version was discovered by the German occultist George Den and published in the 19th century by scholar Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, one of the founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. From that moment on, the occult world began to realize that the Book of Abramelin was not just a treatise on magic. It was a guide to spiritual ascension and mastery over the unknown. But what makes this grimoire so special? Unlike other esoteric texts, it does not promise instant results. Its ritual requires total commitment. 6 months of isolation, strict fasting, daily prayers, and unbreakable discipline. At the end of this process, the magician would achieve contact with their holy guardian angel, an entity that would grant them absolute wisdom. However, this connection came with a terrifying consequence: the necessity of confronting and subjugating 72 lower spirits, often interpreted as demons that would try to prevent the success of the journey. The number 72 is not random. It appears in various mystical and religious traditions. In Kabbalah, there are the 72 names of God, supposedly used to access divine power. In Christian esoteric traditions, some associate the 72 spirits of the Book of Abramelin with the 72 angels and demons mentioned in apocryphal texts. Is this mere coincidence, or is it a hidden key within esoteric knowledge? Another intriguing detail is that the book does not suggest that the practitioner directly summoned malevolent forces. On the contrary, it requires the magician to dominate these entities, placing them under their will and preventing them from exerting influence over their life. This contrasts with more common occult practices, where the evocation of spirits often involves pacts or negotiations. Here, the magician's power comes from a direct connection with their higher entity, making them a kind of king over the spiritual worlds. But if the Book of Abramelin contains such transformative knowledge, why did it remain in the shadows for so many centuries? Why was it only widely disseminated from the 19th century onward? Some theories suggest that this knowledge was suppressed by the Church and by secret societies that hold occult power in the world. Indeed, in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, any practice that granted an individual direct access to the divine without the need for a religious intermediary was seen as heresy and punished by death. Could this be the true reason why the ritual was forgotten for so long? Another curious point is that the grimoire states that those who complete the ritual must follow a strict code of conduct, avoiding the use of their powers for selfish or destructive purposes. This raises an interesting question. Is the knowledge contained in the book dangerous in itself, or does it become a weapon when it falls into the wrong hands? Despite its significance in the occult world, the Book of Abramelin never gained the same popularity as other grimoires. This may be related to the fact that it does not offer shortcuts or empty promises. Unlike magic manuals that teach rituals for love, wealth, or immediate power, this book demands a complete transformation in the way one lives. Those who have truly attempted to follow its ritual have reported intense experiences, some transcendent, others terrifying. Aleister Crowley himself, one of the greatest occultists in history, attempted to perform it but failed. This leads us to an inevitable question. Is the ritual a gateway to true power, or a test that only the most prepared can overcome? Performing the ritual of Abramelin is not like following a magical recipe or chanting spells for immediate results. It demands something that few are willing to offer: total and absolute commitment. For 6 months, the practitioner must abandon all worldly distractions and immerse themselves in a state of extreme purification. But why such rigorous preparation? Is it merely a test of discipline, or is there a hidden reason behind these requirements? Unlike other occult practices, which evoke external spirits to obtain favors, the ritual of Abramelin does not seek random contact with entities. It is based on the idea that every human being has a holy guardian angel, a spiritual guide that holds the true knowledge of the soul. But this connection cannot be made by just anyone. The ordinary mind, distracted by daily life and material concerns, is not prepared to access this higher reality. Hence the necessity of isolation and purification. During the first 2 months, the magician undergoes an intense process of inner transformation. Their diet must be clean, free of meat and alcohol. They must pray 3 times a day, meditate constantly, and eliminate all habits that might distract them from their purpose. The idea behind this is not just symbolic sacrifice, but a way of altering the very functioning of the brain. Modern studies indicate that prolonged meditation and fasting can modify neural patterns, increasing perception and spiritual sensitivity. Could the ritual of Abramelin be preparing the practitioner to expand their consciousness beyond ordinary reality? As the months progress, the changes become more intense. During the second phase, which lasts another 2 months, strange phenomena begin to occur. Many practitioners report vivid dreams and out-of-body experiences. Feelings of invisible presences become constant. What is most intriguing is that these reports appear across different times and cultures, even among those who had no contact with each other. Could they simply be hallucinations caused by isolation, or is there something more? At this stage, the magician faces their first great trial, the temptation to abandon the ritual. During this phase, doubt settles in. Many begin to question their sanity. What if this is all an illusion? What if they are wasting months of their lives on a meaningless ritual? This is a critical moment, as the book itself warns that hidden forces will attempt to prevent the practitioner's progress. This echoes the temptations described in Christian tradition, where saints and mystics were tested by demonic apparitions before reaching enlightenment. But if the holy guardian angel is a benevolent entity, why do these obstacles appear? The answer may lie in the dual nature of the human being. The ritual of Abramelin does not merely seek to elevate the magician spiritually, it also forces them to confront their own shadow. This idea aligns with Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self, the hidden part of the psyche where fears, traumas, and repressed desires reside. By undergoing this trial, the magician is not just facing external spirits, but also the deepest aspects of their own mind. If they manage to withstand these trials, they reach the most anticipated moment: contact with the holy guardian angel. This encounter is described as an overwhelming experience. The magician feels a direct connection with a higher intelligence, receiving visions and knowledge that are impossible to explain in words. For many, this moment represents true spiritual enlightenment, not just mastery over magic, but complete understanding of their own existence. But the journey does not end here. After achieving this connection, the magician faces their final and most dangerous test: dominion over the 72 lower spirits. Traditionally interpreted as demons, these spirits are rebellious forces that attempt to prevent the practitioner's progress. But what if they are something more? Some esoteric traditions suggest that these spirits are not merely external entities, but representations of the chaotic aspects of the human mind. Each one would symbolize a weakness, a fear, or an unresolved desire. Subjugating them does not mean simply controlling them on the astral plane, but also overcoming one's own internal limitations. This would explain why those who fail the ritual often go mad or become obsessed with the occult. They awaken internal forces they cannot control. The book instructs that the magician must impose their will upon these spirits and place them at their service. This is a fundamental point. Unlike many occult practices that teach pacts with entities, the ritual of Abramelin rejects any form of submission to these forces. The magician must not beg or negotiate. They must command. This aligns with the Kabbalistic view that the true initiate does not seek power for themselves, but rather to align their will with the divine order of the universe. But what about those who fail to complete the ritual? What happens to those who abandon it halfway? Here lies one of the darkest aspects of the Book of Abramelin. It warns that interrupting the ritual prematurely can have devastating consequences. There are reports of people who were haunted for the rest of their lives, who lost their sanity, or who were consumed by an irreversible spiritual void. This raises an unsettling question. Does the ritual truly summon external forces, or does it merely expose the depths of the human mind in such an intense way that many cannot cope with it? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between these two extremes. One thing is certain: the ritual of Abramelin is not a game. It is not an experiment for the curious. It is a journey of total transformation, and only those prepared to face their own darkness can hope to complete it. But has this knowledge always been available to everyone, or has it been deliberately kept secret by those who hold the true power? Aleister Crowley is undoubtedly one of the most controversial figures in modern occultism. To some, he was a visionary who challenged religious dogma and sought the true nature of the universe. To others, he was a dangerous manipulator who toyed with forces beyond his control. But regardless of how one views him, there is an episode in his life that even his followers acknowledge as a mistake: his attempt to perform the ritual of Abramelin. The year was 1899. Crowley, an ambitious young occultist, had just broken ties with the Golden Dawn, the esoteric society that had introduced him to the mysteries of the occult. Dissatisfied with the group's limitations, he decided to forge his own path and attain power on his own terms. Inspired by MacGregor Mather's translation of the Book of Abramelin, he believed that completing the ritual would finally reveal his true purpose. To do so, he needed an isolated location, far from the distractions of the outside world. That's when he found Boleskine House, a remote mansion in Scotland, on the shores of Loch Ness. But his choice was not arbitrary. Crowley believed that the geography of the region was essential to the ritual's success. According to ancient occult traditions, certain places on Earth contain energy nexuses, points where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds are thinner. Loch Ness, known for its mysteries and legends dating back to Celtic times, was already considered one of these locations. What Crowley may not have known is that Boleskine already had a sinister reputation before his arrival. Locals told stories of disturbing events, such as the unexplained fire that destroyed a nearby church, trapping worshippers inside with no chance of escape. Accounts of apparitions and strange manifestations circulated among the inhabitants. Was the mansion naturally prone to spiritual phenomena? Or did Crowley's presence and his unfinished ritual amplify these energies? Crowley began the ritual by following all the requirements: strict purification, fasting, total isolation, and daily prayers. In his diary, he recorded intense experiences, visions of luminous entities, the sensation of invisible presences around him, and dreams that felt like direct messages from higher intelligences. But something was wrong. Even in isolation, Crowley maintained his arrogant attitude toward the forces he was attempting to master. The Book of Abramelin warns that the practitioner must approach the ritual with humility and total dedication, but Crowley saw himself as a master of the occult, convinced that his willpower alone was enough to control any entity. This overconfidence may have been his downfall. The true disaster occurred when he was called to Paris to resolve conflicts within the Golden Dawn. He abandoned the ritual prematurely, without performing the necessary procedures to seal what had been opened. This may seem like a minor technicality, but in occultism, such a failure is considered one of the gravest dangers imaginable. When a ritual of this magnitude is left incomplete, the forces awakened do not simply vanish. They remain loose, without a master to command them. From that moment on, strange occurrences at Boleskine intensified. House servants reported sudden personality shifts, paranoia episodes, and even inexplicable suicide attempts. Animals were found dead without apparent wounds. Visitors described an unshakable sense of oppression upon entering the property, as if something unseen was watching them from the shadows. But what really happened there? Did Crowley's ritual awaken entities that remained trapped in the house? Or was it all a psychological effect caused by extreme isolation and intense occult practices? What makes the case even more intriguing is that Boleskine House's eerie influence did not end with Crowley. Decades later, Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page purchased the property, fascinated by the occultist's history. However, Page rarely stayed in the house himself. He left it in the care of a friend, who later reported terrifying experiences. Furniture moving on its own, laughter echoing from nowhere, and a constant feeling of being watched. Over the years, the mansion continued to accumulate tragedies. Mysterious fires destroyed it more than once, with no clear explanation. Residents and visitors reported sleep paralysis, recurring nightmares, and sudden panic attacks without apparent cause. Could it be that Crowley, by failing in the ritual, had left something unfinished that remained active decades later? One theory suggests that his failure was not merely a technical issue, but rather a lack of proper spiritual preparation. The ritual demands profound internal transformation, a complete dissolution of the ego before any contact with higher forces. If Crowley was still trapped by vanity and his need to assert himself as the greatest occultist of his time, he may never have been capable of completing the ritual successfully. Some occultists believe that failing the ritual of Abramelin can create a specific form of spiritual parasitism. The entities invoked do not disappear but continue to exert a negative influence on the practitioner and their surroundings. This could explain why many who attempted the ritual without completing it suffered psychological breakdowns and drastic changes in their lives. But what if Crowley had not failed entirely? What if he had opened a portal to something that could only be fully understood years later? His later work suggests that he never abandoned the goal promised by the ritual of Abramelin. He developed his own version of the ritual, called Liber Samek, a theurgic method based on invoking the holy guardian angel, but modified to reflect his personal philosophy. Was this an attempt to correct the mistake he had made at Boleskine? Whatever truly happened in that house, one thing is certain: Crowley left, but something remained. And the events that followed show that some rituals should not be taken lightly. Boleskine House has become an enigmatic location, a place where the energies awakened were never fully put to rest. Could this be yet another indication that the ritual of Abramelin is not just an esoteric legend, but a real gateway to forces that most people should never attempt to access? At first glance, the ritual of Abramelin may seem like an isolated medieval magical system, but its roots run far deeper than one might imagine. Upon closer examination, it becomes clear that the ritual contains elements directly linked to Jewish Kabbalistic tradition and even concepts present in the Bible. The structure of the ritual, the emphasis on purification, and the contact with a higher entity all follow patterns found in various biblical and mystical passages throughout history. But what does this mean? Could the ritual of Abramelin be an esoteric revelation hidden within the Judeo-Christian tradition, or are we dealing with a forbidden knowledge that has been kept in the shadows for centuries? The first clear connection lies in the very concept of the holy guardian angel. Rather than being merely a personal spiritual guide, some occult scholars believe it may be related to Metatron, the highest angelic entity in Kabbalah. Metatron is described as the divine scribe and intermediary between God and humanity, possessing knowledge that transcends human understanding. Kabbalah teaches that those who make contact with Metatron gain access to true divine wisdom and the power to shape reality. If the guardian angel in the ritual of Abramelin is indeed a manifestation of Metatron, then this ritual could be a secret method for establishing a direct connection with the primordial source of knowledge. But there is an even more intriguing detail. The name Abramelin itself may conceal a hidden meaning. Some scholars suggest that it could be an anagram or a distortion of Hebrew words such as Aba Melech, meaning, "My father is king." If this theory is correct, the name Abramelin would indicate that the ritual was designed to transform the practitioner into a kind of spiritual king. Not one who rules over physical territories, but over invisible forces. This raises a disturbing question. Could this ritual be a key to a form of power meant only for a select few? Another fascinating aspect of the Book of Abramelin is the use of 72 sacred names in the final stage of the ritual, a number that frequently appears in Kabbalah. According to Jewish esoteric tradition, the 72 names of God are sacred combinations of Hebrew letters that grant access to higher states of consciousness and even the ability to manipulate reality. But the book also mentions 72 lower spirits that must be subdued before enlightenment. What exactly do these spirits represent? Many associate them with the 72 demons of the Goetia, which appear in grimoires such as the Lemegeton, but there is a deeper and more unsettling interpretation. They could be fragments of the practitioner's own psyche. Kabbalah teaches that each person possesses 72 internal aspects that must be harmonized to reach a state of spiritual perfection. This suggests that the 72 spirits in the ritual may not be external entities, but rather forces within the magician, parts of their own mind that must be controlled before they can access true divine power. This perspective aligns with ancient texts that emphasize the need to purify the soul before attaining supreme knowledge. In Exodus 24 verse 18, Moses spends 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai before receiving the tablets of the law. This period of isolation and purification closely resembles the structure of the ritual of Abramelin. The number 40 appears in other biblical passages as well. Noah endured 40 days of the flood, Elijah journeyed 40 days before encountering God on Mount Horeb, and the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. What does this signify? In Kabbalistic numerology, the number 40 represents a period of transition, a process of death and spiritual rebirth. Just as these biblical figures underwent trials before receiving divine revelation, the practitioner of the ritual of Abramelin must also undergo a period of isolation and purification before making contact with their guardian angel. This connection cannot be established immediately. It requires the magician to be in an elevated state of consciousness, free from mundane distractions. But if the ritual follows spiritual principles so closely aligned with biblical and Kabbalistic tradition, why was it hidden and relegated to the realm of forbidden occultism? The answer may lie in how institutionalized religions handle individual spiritual power. The ritual of Abramelin does not require a priest, a church, or any hierarchical authority. It is a solitary and direct path to divine contact, something that has always been viewed as dangerous by religious institutions. During the Inquisition, for example, any practice that granted individuals direct access to the divine without the need for an intermediary was deemed heretical. The fact that the ritual grants knowledge and direct spiritual authority may have been reason enough for it to be suppressed. There are also indications that secret societies had access to teachings similar to those found in the Book of Abramelin. The Knights Templar, known for their connection to Kabbalah and alchemy, may have possessed fragments of this knowledge. Some traditions claim that the Rosicrucians also studied similar rituals, seeking enlightenment through purification processes and contact with higher intelligences. This would suggest that the ritual has always existed throughout history, but only for those who knew where to find it. Another intriguing clue comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in the 1940s. These texts, attributed to the Jewish Essene sect, describe purification rituals, communication with angelic beings, and mystical knowledge meant only for the initiated. Some passages speak of the sons of light battling the sons of darkness, a spiritual struggle that closely resembles the concept of subduing the 72 lower spirits before achieving spiritual ascension. If the Essenes practiced something similar to the ritual of Abramelin, then this knowledge could be far older than previously believed. If the ritual of Abramelin truly grants the practitioner the ability to master the hidden forces of the universe, it could never be openly shared. It would be far too dangerous. This raises one final question. Has this knowledge been lost, or has it merely been reserved for an elite who continue to use it in secret? Throughout history, knowledge has always been synonymous with power. Those who control information control reality, and this applies not only to politics and economics but also to the occult. If the ritual of Abramelin truly grants mastery over invisible forces, it makes sense that this knowledge was never widely disseminated. But was it merely forgotten over time, or deliberately kept in the shadows by those who understand its true potential? Unlike other, more popular magical practices, the ritual of Abramelin cannot be performed by just anyone. It demands months of purification, sacrifice, and extreme commitment, requirements that few would be willing to endure. This alone makes it an inherently restricted form of knowledge. But there is something even more intriguing: evidence suggesting that the very text of the ritual may have been altered, fragmented, or censored over the centuries. Occult researchers have noted inconsistencies in the known versions of the Book of Abramelin. Some translations appear incomplete, and certain instructions are ambiguous, as if essential parts were missing. This raises the suspicion that the version of the book available today is not exactly the same as the one that circulated among medieval initiates. But why would anyone alter such a powerful system of knowledge? One possibility is that the ritual was deliberately tampered with to prevent just anyone from successfully completing it. In this way, only those who already possessed an advanced level of occult understanding would be able to fill in the gaps. This practice was common among esoteric orders that reserved their secrets only for the most advanced initiates. If this is the case, then the occult elite may have preserved crucial parts of the ritual while leaving the rest of the world with an incomplete and harmless version. But who exactly could be behind this concealment? History is full of secret societies that appear to have had access to advanced esoteric knowledge. The Templars, for example, were known for their study of Kabbalah and alchemy. Some theorists believe they may have preserved the true ritual of Abramelin before being persecuted by the Church in the 14th century. The Rosicrucians, a mystical society that emerged in the 17th century, claimed to possess spiritual secrets related to soul transmutation and contact with higher intelligences, concepts strikingly similar to the ultimate goal of the ritual. Another frequently mentioned group in this context is Freemasonry. While modern Masons deny any direct involvement with occult practices, the higher degrees of the order contain teachings about spiritual enlightenment, inner transformation, and the search for hidden truth. Documents suggest that certain Masonic initiation rituals follow a pattern similar to that of Abramelin, requiring isolation, trials, and contact with spiritual forces. Could this knowledge have been discreetly incorporated into other traditions so that only the chosen few could access it? But perhaps the most intriguing question is not who hid the ritual, but why it would be so valuable to the elite. If we analyze its principles, isolation, heightened consciousness, mastery over spiritual and psychic energies, we realize that it not only grants individual power but could also influence collective reality. This leads to an even deeper question. What if the elite is not merely interested in worldly power but in controlling humanity's very perception of reality? This theory becomes even more compelling when we examine how occult knowledge has been treated throughout history. During the Inquisition, any knowledge that granted individuals spiritual autonomy was systematically destroyed or discredited. In the 20th century, the study of consciousness and mysticism was reduced to superstition or repackaged as entertainment in popular culture. Magic was transformed from a tool for spiritual ascension into something associated with fairy tales or horror stories. But what if this was not just a natural progression, but a deliberate strategy to ensure that this knowledge was never taken seriously? The idea that small groups use esoteric knowledge to maintain their dominance is nothing new. Great empires have always had spiritual advisors who assisted in decision-making and foresaw the future. The difference in the modern era is that these practices have been pushed out of the public sphere. But if influential historical figures sought occult guidance, why wouldn't today's elite do the same? Various theories suggest that the most powerful societies in the world still use principles similar to those of the ritual of Abramelin to achieve their goals, not necessarily by performing the ritual in its traditional form, but by applying its concepts through adapted rituals or practices that manipulate collective consciousness. The modern concept of manifesting reality, popularized through books like The Secret, may even be a simplified and commercialized version of deeper occult teachings. Another possibility is that the ritual contains instructions that, if followed correctly, would allow the practitioner to access dimensions beyond our understanding. If contact with the holy guardian angel truly grants absolute knowledge, it could serve as a bridge to parallel realities, something that modern quantum physics is beginning to consider as a possibility. Could the elite be using this knowledge to explore aspects of existence that remain inaccessible to most of humanity? And there is one final detail to consider. What if the elite not only hid the ritual but also found a way to modify it for their own purposes? The Book of Abramelin emphasizes that those who complete the ritual must adhere to a strict moral code, never using their power for selfish or destructive ends. However, history has shown that not everyone who seeks power has noble intentions. What would happen if someone performed the ritual, not for spiritual enlightenment, but to reinforce their dominance over the world? If this hypothesis is true, then perhaps the greatest secret of the ritual of Abramelin is not just its power, but the risk that it may already be in use, shaping society in ways we can barely perceive. This raises one final and unsettling question. What if the reality we know has already been altered by those who possess this knowledge? The ritual of Abramelin is not merely a method for attaining spiritual power, it is a journey of complete transformation. But like any path of deep self-discovery, it carries dangers that go beyond mere frustration from failing to achieve results. There is something about this ritual that seems to test the limits of the human mind and reality itself. But what exactly happens to those who attempt it? Is it a gateway to forbidden knowledge, or a trap disguised as enlightenment? Unlike other magical grimoires, the Book of Abramelin offers no shortcuts. It does not promise instant wealth or immediate control over entities. It demands total commitment, months of isolation, and a level of discipline that few can sustain. However, records from those who have attempted it show that failure does not always mean an inconclusive ritual. In many cases, it brings permanent consequences. The first major risk lies in the mental impact of the practice. Extreme isolation, sensory deprivation, and the intensity of the ritual can induce altered states of consciousness similar to those experienced in shamanic rites and initiation ceremonies of ancient cultures. Some tribes use prolonged fasting and meditative states to access spiritual realities. Modern science is beginning to understand that this may be linked to the activation of natural substances in the brain, such as endogenous DMT, which induces visions and experiences of contact with other intelligences. This raises an intriguing question. Was the ritual of Abramelin designed as a tool to tune the mind to higher dimensions? Or does it merely expose the practitioner to extreme hallucinations, with no guarantee that what they are experiencing is real? Another concerning aspect is the contact with the 72 lower spirits, which must be subdued before encountering the holy guardian angel. In previous discussions, we explored the possibility that these entities represent psychological weaknesses or hostile external forces. But there is a third, even more unsettling hypothesis. What if these spirits are actually energetic frequencies that shape the reality around us? If the magician does not know how to manipulate them correctly, they may end up altering aspects of their own perception of existence. This would explain why many who have attempted the ritual reported irreversible changes in their way of seeing the world, as if they had crossed a boundary with no return. Moreover, there is the danger that the ritual itself is incomplete or corrupted. Some scholars believe that the text we have today may have been deliberately altered to prevent anyone from successfully completing it. If we analyze ancient esoteric traditions, we see that many teachings were passed down in coded form, so that only initiates could understand their true instructions. If this hypothesis is correct, anyone attempting the ritual of Abramelin using publicly available information may be embarking on an impossible process, trapped in a state of uncontrolled spiritual openness. This would explain reports of individuals who, after attempting the ritual, began feeling constant presences around them, suffered psychological breakdowns, or simply vanished from public life without explanation. The most well-known case of failure in the ritual is that of Aleister Crowley, but he was not the only one. Other occultists throughout history reported similar experiences when attempting advanced practices to contact higher entities. John Dee and Edward Kelly, for example, claimed to receive messages from spiritual intelligences through Enochian magic, but many of these messages were cryptic and contradictory, leading to the downfall of their experiments. This raises an important question. What if some entities do not want this knowledge to be accessed? In certain Gnostic traditions, it is believed that the reality we perceive is an illusion controlled by forces that prevent human awakening. If this idea holds any truth, the ritual of Abramelin could pose a threat to that control system. This brings us to a rarely discussed risk. What if failure in the ritual is not an accident, but a defense mechanism against those who attempt to surpass the limits of common reality? And there is one final risk that few dare to consider. What if success in the ritual is even more dangerous than failure? The book promises that, by the end of the process, the practitioner will make contact with their holy guardian angel and receive absolute knowledge. But there is a subtle detail that often goes unnoticed. What happens afterward? The book does not provide much detail on what life is like for someone who has successfully completed the ritual. This suggests that those who reach the end of this journey may simply disappear from the world as we know it. This raises an even deeper question. Is the human mind capable of handling such a revelation? In various mystical traditions, there are stories of sages and prophets who, upon receiving supreme truths, went mad or lost all interest in material life. If the ritual of Abramelin truly grants the practitioner absolute understanding of reality, perhaps the greatest risk is not death or insanity, but realizing that the world we know is insignificant compared to what lies beyond. And this leads us to the final question. If this ritual truly unlocks unparalleled power, should it even be performed? Or are there some secrets that humanity was never meant to uncover? If this ritual truly grants the power it promises, it makes sense that it was hidden, altered, or reserved for an elite who understand its true potential. At the same time, its risks are so immense that perhaps it has remained in the shadows not only due to suppression, but for self-preservation. After all, some doors, once opened, can never be closed. If you're interested in exploring more about spirituality, I've selected a few videos packed with deep knowledge and fascinating discoveries that you'll love. Just click on one of them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step toward transforming your reality.